Yeah, I contacted this guy Flip Flops and he taught me everything about this game.
No, your sailing was bad, your blocking was bad, your focus fire was bad, your debuffs are bad.
Wow. Way to get spiked.
I am Renee. My expertise fields in this game is PvP and RV.
The deacon saved my soul. What of yours?
This decision is like, what is this?
Next, spec into offensive brawling to ensure you are dealing maximum damage.
That's a whole patch secret. What the fuck?
I need a fucking block. I need a goddamn arc.
Their consistency.
Mind your own goddamn business. I'm doing my job, bud.
How about to decide this ban, we have a 6 versus 6. My group versus Vision.
I'm in here fighting, motherfucker.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about charging, which is something that I think has sort of gotten away from people in the last couple years since the accuracy changes, because charging used to be something that was a really good tactic. When you had Too Mean to Die, you had Invincible, you could charge, get into someone's lines, disrupt them, and for certain fleets and for certain factions, it was the only choice you had. So there's 3 tenets to charging. One is wind. Number 2 is arcs, or avoiding arcs and not putting yourself in a terrible spot. And then number 3 is committing to it, and everybody committing to it. And then also what plan you have for after you charge. So we're going to go through 3 videos and sort of just critique the strategies that were used and the plans that were used, and just see how they go. And so something that's in common on all of these is that it's on maps where charging is sort of a requirement. So there's a few different times you might want to charge. One is if you have a channel or something where the enemy fleet blocks the entire channel, and you need to get to the town or something, and you're here, and the only way to get there is to go through, and so you either have to do some fancy cycling or you have to charge. So that's number 1. Number 2 would be when you have sort of think of like Stingray is a good example, where you have the fort gun here, or the town gun, sorry, and then you've got the Bay of Doom down here, and a lot of people line up like this or something like that, and you need to come this way, and you have to dislodge them because the town is here, and you have to somehow get in there. So a lot of people, come here and they either go this way, or they go right across the land and they charge, or they do some sort of like cycling and then they charge. And then the last one is where you sort of have 2 fleets that are moving. And so the good example of this is Vulcan's Caldera, where you have that northern piece of land like this, and then there's like the center island down here. And what usually happens is the attackers will spawn here because the wind goes like this, and the defenders will spawn here, and these guys will go up like this, and these guys will go like this, and they will meet in the middle. And sometimes it turns into a line fight like this, and then sometimes it turns into a crash where there's a big charge here. So those are sort of the 3 general reasons you might want to charge and need to charge. And then they obviously, if you talk about sort of the factions that are involved, it's generally going to be the pirates, because so we have the pirates and we have the nationals. So roughly, pirates have a lot of skills which are short range, cripple, that sort of thing. They don't have long range debuffs like Thunder, which tends to be best used in a line fight situation. So that's one for the nationals down here. But besides that, pirates tend to have better maneuverability, better damage, better reload, and generally skills that are better for brawls. Now, that's not saying the nationals can't do it. Obviously, they're very strong in a number of ways as well. But there's an advantage here. I'd have to say it's like a 5-3 probably in terms of factors which go for one side or the other. So if you're these guys, you probably want to push in and brawl. And so if you ever watch older videos, especially during Legacy when it was easier to charge with Too Mean to Die, pirates charging was very common and very successful. There seems to be a loss in that because there isn't a lot of cohesiveness now among fleets, and charging is something where everybody has to commit, which we'll talk about. And so it's rare because if everybody doesn't commit, it usually ends terribly. So let's jump into a video and see how it goes here. I'm just going to play it, and we'll watch this charge first. And this is one that's happened recently, so it's not legacy, not that era, but it does highlight a few things. So let's look at the situation first. So one, you have the wind, which you can see here. So, you know, what's going to happen in this video is these guys are going to charge in. So we're looking at it from the perspective of the pirates, and we're saying, what did they do right and what did they do wrong? So the first tenant, or the first sort of thing you need to look out for, is the wind. So in this case, the wind is coming this way. So why we talk about wind is that you don't want to charge upwind. When you're charging, you want to get into the enemy fleet or line as quickly as possible. So how do you minimize this distance? And how do you do it fast? So we got a few things going for us here. Is that the wind is good. The wind is going this way. So they're coming in with full wind. They also have frigates mostly. There's a couple heavy rates back here, but all of this is frigates. And if you look at the numbers over here, it's pretty even. They actually have an advantage. So if you lose, you know, even 4 people right at the start, you're still going to have an advantage. So the wind is good. So let's do, hang on, we'll do the 1, 2, 3. So wind is check mark. As we play this, it's going to be, well, what you should look for is the arcs. So number 2 is arcs, or avoid. What this means is essentially, how can you avoid losing people when you charge? So when these guys come in, how are they going to avoid getting blown up? So if we press play here, you'll see that they're coming in, it's looking good. Now what's happening, and this is where it gets scary for them, is if you look up here, there's about, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ships that aren't caught up. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe there's one here, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-ish charging. So you have 11 charging, you have 10 not even going to take part in this. Now, number 1 was wind, number 2 was arcs, and as you can see, the Brits are lining up here. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and there's going to be a lot more coming, all getting arcs. Now they're still at 600 range, so it's too far to shoot. But as you watch this clip progress, watch how the arcs line up and watch the pirates' reaction. So they're coming in. There's a line forming here at the bottom. The rats are sort of getting ready here. And now they make a strange play, which, if we talk about wind, they've just added time. So we talked about how we want to make this distance the shortest possible time. And so the problem here is that instead of coming straight in, minimizing that distance, they're now going this way. That's a lot longer line. And every time these guys turn and make a maneuver or drop sails, the time to get from here to here is getting longer. And so they're opening themselves up to more shots from the Brits. So if we keep playing, you'll see they're coming in. Now there's, like, you're at 415 here. And so we're going to see this guy get blown up in a second. Because if you now look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Brits here. So it's not even their whole fleet. They're not even really ready for this. But there's a couple Concords, which helps. But look at this, like, there's no retaliation here. And so if we go back to draw mode, again, we're talking about arcs and avoiding arcs. What they've done here is put themselves on what could have been a charge. Instead, they made it into like basically a nose curl, because it's not really a charge anymore. They've opened themselves up to all these arcs, and they don't have anything. They got nothing. They can't even retaliate. So not only are they not getting in as quickly as they could have, they're also putting themselves in a place where they can't shoot back. So this guy gets jugged. And and thundered, which again, that's sort of the benefit to being a national right now is you have thunder, which isn't that strong really, because if you're in a spot to get one shot, you're going to get one shot regardless of thunder if the other fleet is good. But it doesn't help, especially in a situation like this where like who's going to block this guy? Probably nobody. But if we keep playing it, you can see he gets blown up, and they're still coming in on this tack. Now if we jump forward to tenant number 3, so we had 1 was wind, 2 was arcs, 3 was commit. So if you're going to do a charge, you're going to probably lose 1 or 2 people, maybe 3, depending on what you're charging into. And so what you need to have is you need to have everybody ready to go. And so the problem here is that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'd say this guy too. There's one over here, 10. At least 10 ships not even ready to commit to this. Now, if you had all 10 ready, you'd be in a better spot because the Brits only have a few here, and look how stacked they are. Like, this is not good. So had this been a clean charge, it could have been something very nice. But instead what you have is, you know, people are getting sunk already, and you have people back here who are 1,000, 1,500 meters out of range. And you have people here dropping sails, like this guy. And you have this guy dropping sails. And trying to form a line. It's too late for a line. Like, this is not time to form a line when your front of your line is at 282 and you still have no arcs because you have arcs on you. So number 3 is commit. And so what that means is everybody has to commit to the charge, and you have to be ready to charge. And you need to be having a plan for what happens after the charge. So what you can tell here is that they didn't really have a plan. They came in like this, and then they turned, and now what are they doing now? They're going to form a line now and start spiking back. Well, if they're going to do that, they need to go this way, not this way. And so they're drifting, basically planless, I think. But they didn't really have a plan, is the takeaway. So if we go back a second to this point in the battle, this is where they could still turn off here. And so what they should have done, given the fact that they have all these people in the back not ready to do anything, they should have just turned like this. Because you have the wind, as you can see here, the wind is coming this way. So if you form a line like this, you've got all the time in the world. These Brits have to come upwind and slowly get to you. It's going to take a while. There's only like 10 of them here. The rest are back here somewhere. So why rush? But instead, they rush in and they get blown up. So if we go back here, too far. So what happens quickly here is they're still not really sure what they're doing. I don't think they're coming in. And now right here, you can see a call has been made. So what's happened is from here back, these guys have now decided to go to the sterns. It's not really the sterns though, because as we're going to see, there's still like 10 Brits back here, somewhere on this side. And so they've decided to go to the sterns. So the problem here is that instead of making this path that we talked about short and direct, they've made it like this, where it's a long twisting tail to this point. And this whole time, as they're going through here like this, they're at full arcs of the Brits. And so they haven't shot back once yet, and they've already lost one guy, and then this guy's obviously going to die here. So it's kind of like you've lost 2 people, you don't have half your fleet, and now you're turning and making your time without arcs even longer. Because every time they turn, if you watch, people are dropping sails, they're going to be slow, people are turning wide, this buck went like this, like shoot like that, like it's just going to be nasty. So if we keep playing it, they come in. They still don't have a plan, you can tell. They're going all different directions. There's people back here who are just coming into their death, essentially. And the Brits turn. So, again, part of the planning side of things is that everybody in this fight, or most people in this fight, are in frigates. So all these frigates are just as fast as you are. And so if you're going to charge in, you can't turn 100 times because you're not going maximum speed. And if you're not going max speed, these guys can just kite you out. And so now what you've done by turning and zigzagging is all of these Brits are going to line up and you're getting curled again. Now finally they have arcs, they're shooting. But again, they've lost 2 and this guy is about to evaporate. So we'll just keep playing it. They all turn. Now they're, and this is by no means good sailing here. This is pretty rough, but it's better than what the pirates are doing. So they didn't kill the one guy, but this guy who blocked him is going to sink. He's gone. They're curled. You still have people dropping sails in the back here, not committing to the charge. And at this point, it's basically over. Because they're now basically completely nose curled. Again, we're in a position where most of the pirates are behind. They don't have arcs. The 1 or 2 that do are just going to get blown up. There goes another. And now it's just basically a rout. And if we go forward here, so what's happened is the Brits have turned, as we saw. Now the pirates have turned. The problem is that they're now, if we look at the wind, stuck in the wind. So with the wind coming this way, if they want to go this way, they can only go so high. And then they have to either turn through the wind, which is slow, or they have to turn this way and commit, basically. Either way won't go very well for them. And so if we just keep playing it here, I'm just going to fast forward it. You can see that they get stuck in the wind, and they're just getting one by one blown up by these Brits. And this isn't, again, good sailing. Like, there's stacking, there's only a few people with arcs, but it just goes to show how, you know, even against the enemy who isn't well organized, if you don't sail correctly, it's just, you're just getting farmed. And so these guys all get sunk. They turn through the wind. They've lost another couple. We're up to 9 now. And if we keep going, it's just a rout. They'll just have to run. And essentially that's the end of the port battle. Now what's really funny here is that these are the guys who were parked up here. And they have now decided to charge. I'm not sure. And it's really confusing because they're in the same society as most of the pirates. So it's kind of a question of what are they doing? Like, are they listening? Are they not? Are they paying attention? Are they alts? I don't know. If they are alts, you're doing yourself no favor here because it looks like you have 24, but in reality, at the most, they only had 11 this whole time. So if they are alts, don't bring them because they're useless. And if you can't sail 1 ship, don't sail 2, is the general rule. And then what's this going to do besides just donate marks to these players? So if we just keep playing it, and I'll just fast forward, they come through. Not really sure what their plan was, but they all get sunk, obviously. So very strange. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they were trying to get into the town. But, like, that's it's a pretty low success run there. And again, what's really sad here, if you think about this being the town, is that there was 24 pirates in this battle versus 22, and you have to run to the town. If that is your plan, if that's what you're relying on, then you're probably playing the wrong game, because this is meant to be a ship battle game. If you're going to bring 24 and not even fight, I don't know what you're doing, because you're just poisoning the minds of these new pirates who might be playing, who think this is the way it should be played. But in reality, you're just getting their ship sunk for nothing. So anyway, so that's the first video, and we'll jump to the next one. Okay, so this is the second video, and so what we've got here, just to back it up 1 second, is this is Vulcan's Caldera, and this is the version of it where it's like this, and the fleets are coming, the wind is like this, and these are the pirates in this case, and this is the Brits in this case, and it's roughly even. I think there's 15 of these and 18 of those. It's roughly even though. But essentially what's happening is the pirates are charging, and instead of turning it into a line fight, where both sides go down south, shooting back and forth, they're going to charge. And so if we look at the video, what's number 1? Wind. Well, in this case, the wind isn't great. It's roughly 90, but for a bunch of pirates, that's fine. They're fast enough. They're all in frigates. It's not ideal, but it'll work. 2 is arcs. Well, you can see from the start here that we're at 200 and they have no arcs. One guy. And so they've done a really good job here of setting this up and getting into range without even taking a shot. So usually when you charge, you can expect to lose 1, 2, or 3 people, depending on, again, the situation. In this case, they're not going to lose anybody because they're at 200 and there's no arcs. That's really good. And then 3 is commit and the plan. And so we'll see here that they do commit. They're well lined up. They're all close together. And the plan when they get through is there. There's a plan. There's a reason they're charging. They're not just going to sort of diddle and daddle. They want to get in and brawl. And so if we watch, and I wasn't in either of these either, to be unbiased, but as you can see, the Brits are realizing, oh crap, we need to line up. There's still some in the back. They're kind of playing the role of the pirates in this one. And the pirates are in. So now they've charged. And now why I say commit is important is if you look here, it's kind of blurry. But anyway, you can see that they're a lot more condensed here. And so don't get me wrong, like these 2 are out of it and maybe 1 or 2 in the back here, but there's probably 4 out of it. So that leaves a good 14 here ready to commit. Now there's a few dropping sails. It's not perfect. But again, because they're sort of already in range here, it's a lot less egregious. If this was happening and there was a good line 600 yards away, it would be bad or worse. But given the fact that they're already in, it's okay that there's a few back here because they're not going to lose 1, 2, or 3 people in the charge because look, the Brits only have really 2 arcs maybe. Like they can't spike someone out with that. So if we keep playing it, they get in. And now this is where the part 3 becomes a thing, which is what's your plan when you get in? There's a lot of things you can do. If you're charging this way, like we've seen, and the enemy line is like this, and we'll make it like noticeable. So you can either charge in and you can follow them and turn it into like a running brawl. You can charge in and stop. You can charge in and keep going. And so they have to either brawl with you like this or they have to turn back. But generally what you want to do is if you're fighting heavy ships, you want to stay on top of them so they can't line up. Because if the heavy ships turn and line up, they're just going to destroy you here. If you're fighting frigates, it doesn't really matter as much. What's most important is keeping your arcs and your advantage. So what's going to happen here is the Brits are all going to sail this way, and the pirates are going to come across, and they're going to get stern. And you can see that their plan is to stay upwind because all of these guys, besides the person who led the charge, are all heading this way. So their plan is stay upwind, keep the sterns, and probably roll with them and shoot them in the sterns. So if we watch, that's pretty much what happens, I think. But you can see all the Brits are turning downwind. The pirates are just crashing in. This is really good. Right now you've got the Brits with no arcs, no cohesion, whereas the pirates are coming through and they're going to start calling targets on sterns and bows here. So you can see they're crashing in. This is what a charge should look like. You should actually get into melee range. They've already killed 1. They've killed 2. They're just shooting sterns. And so you can see the plan was to flow with them. And so what the pirates are doing is they're flowing with the Brits, looking for the stern shots because the Brits are all mostly downwind of them. But from here it's just a slaughter, and it's quick. Because this is the power of the pirates, is that when you get into range like this and you can cripple, the pirates hit hard. And so you can see how quickly these British ships are melting. We've only gone a cumulative like 20 seconds at 2 times speed, and there's 3 people dead already. And there's going to be more very quickly here. So you can see they're flowing with them. Now the Brits are starting to pull away here, but as we talked about with the plan was for these guys to sail away, and all the pirates are going to stay upwind. And they've mostly done that. Now is it perfect? No. In a charge it's always crazy. But they've mostly stayed upwind. They haven't gone really past here. And the Brits are now flowing downwind. And so the pirates are the ones who have cohesion up here and have the wind now, which is huge for pirates. So we keep going. It's really just a slaughter from here. But like this is the strength of the pirate classes, is when you can brawl like this. If we speed it up a little bit, you can see the Brits are now sort of, again, like we talked about with the plan, they're sailing away, partially because they're just routing, but partially because that's all you can really do. You can't stay in the back when there's tons of pirates back here, and the pirates are keeping wind, and they're just going to stern bomb all these guys. If we keep playing it, it's pretty much over from here. There goes another. And from here on, it's just a rout. So that's the power of that. And we'll watch one more. So this is an older one. And this is something that I think is really, so a couple notes here. This is really good to have as a leader. Or if you're just doing anything, because you can sort of get an overall situation. But what's going on here is that the Brits are defending. And they've built two lines. They've got a heavy line like this. Heavy. And the light, or the frigates, here. Now the French have come in as a big blob and are going to charge through the bay. And this is, this is like 2.10 or something, or maybe 11. But it's old accuracy. So this is where you could get spiked out at 600 or something like that, maybe more. You've got HMCs in here, which still had 20 pounders. So this is more of an example of a legacy charge, or what would be more like a legacy charge. So if we talk about wind, and so this is, let's just put it here, wind. The problem with the wind here is that the French are in heavy ships. You can see big boats here. And they're charging essentially 90, maybe even like yellow wind, which in a big boat is very bad. So this is bad wind. 2 is arcs, or avoid. Now, the problem with that, as you're going to see, is that they're going to sail into a V. So what that means is that you have a V like this of 2 lines, and the French are going to fly right through the middle. And so you have all of these arcs shooting, while the French can only really shoot nothing. So bad. And then the last one is the plan and committing. So they commit, I'll give them that. But usually this will probably end up bad if these 2 are X's, because you're going to lose too many people trying to get in. So if we push play here, we can see that what quickly happens is the frigates turn. The French are sort of meandering through, mostly just because they're so heavy. They can't really go that fast, and they're going upwind. And we'll just let it play for a minute here. I'm going to speed it up, actually. This is a pretty long one, I think. So what happens is they turn right here. We'll get up here. Here's a good view. So what's happened is the Brits heavies are here, the frigates are here, and this is the French line, roughly. So there's the V. So you've got arcs, and you've got arcs, and there's no hope of getting a block up in the front here. And that's not going to go so well for them. So this again is, the wind is bad. You can see that they're charging maybe 90 at the best in heavy boats, and the arcs are terrible. They've done nothing to avoid them. They've been in range this whole time. So if we keep playing it, they come in. Now what's interesting here is that back in the day you had invincibility, so you could just be immune. That's why nobody's shooting at this guy, because he's immune to damage right now. Can't damage him if you wanted to, which was what made charging a lot easier back in the day. Not that you can't still do it, but back in the day it was a lot easier, because you could buy yourself 30 seconds of invincibility, and then some people could buy themselves 30 seconds more on final D and still get a block. But either way, his invince comes off, he's instantly destroyed, which is, if you want to go back to Legacy, get used to this, where people just instantly sink, because that's the way it was. It's basically like if you're today fighting at 300 yards, like that's pretty much what you're doing at all times in Legacy, so you can instantly be spiked at almost any time by a good fleet. But you can really see the V here up in the minimap. It's pretty bad. So they come in. They've only lost 1, They lost a few others earlier, but really they've only lost one on the charge so far. So they actually do get in. There's a boarding there. Now this is a really good boarding by the Brits because they essentially forced the French line to turn. So this was actually a really good play. I don't know who boarded who, but either way it was a good play. Because now see the French heavies are trying to turn up here and it's a mess. They're up in the wind. They don't have speed. It's going to be a real struggle. Some of them are already turning off at the back here, so the commitment part isn't very good. And from here, it's basically a slaughter. Now, they do get some kills, just because the state of the game and the heavy ships, like you're going to kill people no matter what. You're going to sink people. But overall, it's a pretty big rout. And now, so the Brit heavies are coming through, basically crossing the T if you want to use like actual naval stuff. But essentially just blowing up the French as they go by. There goes another one. And so now you've got the brawl. And so the difference here between this port bow and the last one is that in the last one the Rats had the wind like this and the Brits went this way, and it was sort of like a stern shot disaster. In this one, what's happening is the Brits are holding firm like this, and the French are coming in sort of one at a time, and they don't really have arcs on anything. Like they can shoot some stuff, but really most of the arcs are like this from the Brits still. And so it's turning into a brawl here, but it's a brawl where one side is sort of trickling in, and it's kind of like getting thicker as you go, so it's kind of like this, and the other side is just here. And so they're still very cohesive. They can still call targets. They have people on the side shooting in, whereas the French have people like this shooting down. And it's only one or two ships on either side. So it's not very effective. Anyway, terrible drawing. But the point being that they're sort of in a bucket here. And so now they're trying to turn away. It's not going to really work, though, because the Brits are still nice and cohesive here. Still have arcs. The guy who recorded this is going to get like stuck on an island here. But you can see we're up to 8 sunk on one side. The Brits have only lost 1 since the charge began. There goes another. They're just blowing them up now. And it's basically a route from here. So if we just skip forward, you can see the aftermath, which is just remnants of the French fleet kind of floating around. And the Brits only lost 3. If we go back to the start, it was 4-2. So the French have lost pretty much the entire fleet, and the Brits lost 3 people, I think, total. Maybe one more. But regardless, well, they lost 6. But either way, the loss on the French side was a lot worse. And so it really came down to those two things, which if you go back to the start, and we pause it here, oh, it's not a good spot. Right there's a good spot. If we look at the wind, it's bad. If we look at the arcs, it's real bad. And if you look at the plan, well, the plan was probably just to drive through and blow people up on either side. But in reality, what happened is they tried to charge through. If we look at it from this angle, it's easier to draw. This is the frigates. These are the heavies. They tried to drive through. They were too slow. And so some of them got stuck here in boarding, and others turned off. A few went this way. And before you know it, they just all got sunk by the Brits, who just stayed in this sort of catch basin. Because again, the wind was like this. There's land here. So where are you going to go? You can't go this way because the wind. You turn this way, you're into a bay and the land. And eventually they just get sunk. So that's really the core basis of this. If we just look at the tenants one more time, it's wind, arcs or avoid, and 3 commit and plan. And so wind, I'd say, is extremely important. Don't charge up wind. Arcs and avoid, you can expect to lose 1, 2, or 3. If you're losing more than that, or if you're getting stuck in a position where you're, terribly out sort of arced for a long period of time, then that's really bad. And for the commitment part, this is the most important. Everybody has to be on board. If your fleet isn't good enough or isn't willing to risk their ships, or they think they're going to lose, don't charge, because everybody has to commit. Everybody has to drive through, and everybody has to realize that you're going to lose 1 to 4 people, but that's okay. That's the whole point. If people are afraid to commit though, and they're hanging back at 1,000 yards, you might as well just stay at range, because you're not going to win if you charge. And then the plan. When you do break through the line, let's say you're charging this way, what are you going to do? Are you going to go with them? Are you going to hold wind? Are you going to slow down here and shoot sterns? What are you going to do? What does your fleet sort of let you do? And the big advantage of charging is that when you do cross, you have way more arcs than they do. And so the best thing to do is usually just keep the sterns and follow them, because they're going to be in disarray when you charge them. And if you can stay cohesive and maintain your sort of arc superiority here, you're going to win. But that's about it.